The following is a paid political announcement.
This November, down-ballot victories are more important than in any past election. Presenting the Get Out and Vote Republican campaign. The purpose is to reach local conservative and Republican voters, to drive them to vote, and to vote down ballot on party lines. Get out and vote in this crucial election year. Vote down ballot on party lines. Get out and vote Republican.
I am Paul King, candidate for Congress in New York 5. I approve this message.
Paid for by Paul King for Congress.
Another assassination attempt on former President Donald Trump.
The status on President Trump.
Now the latest from 77 WABC. Here's Curtis Sliwa.
And the big story tonight, bar none, is the second attempted assassination of Donald Trump while he was on his golf course in West Palm Beach at about 2 o'clock this afternoon. And giving us the late-breaking details is James Flippin. James, what can you tell our WABC audience about this second attempted assassination?
Yeah, Curtis, it's about 2 months since the first assassination attempt, technically speaking, just over 2 months. And it would have been around 1:30 this afternoon when a 911 call came in for shots fired. Originally, the reporting surrounding all of this was that former President Trump was just kind of in the wrong place at the wrong time. Maybe there had been some shooting off-site, kind of like we heard at the RNC about shots fired, and it turned out to be something completely unrelated to the convention. Turned out this was, in fact, very much related to the former president. And this was at Trump International Golf Club, West Palm Beach, which is about a 10-minute drive west from Mar-a-Lago Club. OK, so really, this is not just the golf club course, but also right near President Trump's house. About an hour past that 911 call, we got an update from the Trump campaign. Trump safe, following gunshots in the vicinity. And then shortly before 3 o'clock p.m., the Secret Service went on X and said this was, in fact, a protective incident. So things were starting to kind of unfold here, right? Originally, like I said, 911 call, shots fired. Is Trump involved in this? Is he not? Turns out you get word that this is a protective incident. 3:40 p.m., the White House says, okay, we've been briefed. That's when you get an update from Vice President Harris on X saying, we're glad that Trump is safe. There's no place for violence in America. So you're starting to piece things together. Okay, this was, in fact, some kind of an attempted assassination, an assassination attempt. And things were trickling out at this time. The Associated Press, Curtis, first reported that a gun muzzle had come out from a fence along the golf course, that a long gun, its muzzle had come out, and that's what prompted a response from the Secret Service. Now, over time, we learned a person was in custody. Somebody in a different county's sheriff's department had pulled over a car on I-95 and arrested a guy, the suspect that we'll talk about later, and this guy's been identified since as 58-year-old Ryan Wesley Routh. Ryan Wesley Routh, identified as this guy who is this second attempted assassin for former President Trump. And the witness, apparently, in this case, we later learned from authorities, took a photo of this suspect's license plate. So Ryan Wesley Routh, allegedly, was basically camped out in a wooded area along the golf course. So the golf course has got a wooded area surrounding it. You know, you picture there's roads surrounding that golf course. This is a guy who had set up a assassin's nest there in this little wooded area with a chair and some hanging ceramics that were supposed to be kind of bulletproof type ceramics and this AK-style rifle. Now, what happened was apparently the Secret Service was about 1 to 2 holes ahead of where Trump was actually golfing. You know, you figure the Secret Service agents, they go out ahead, they scout things out, look for any security breaches, any kind of threats. That's what happened. The Secret Service agents saw this gun coming out of the fence, saw this muzzle breach the fence line, and took a shot at the guy. And, you know, later we heard from one of the sheriffs involved in this saying, you don't ask any questions in that situation. You see somebody pointing a gun outside of the fence, the president is 300 to 500 yards away. you fire. And that's what happened. So this suspect, allegedly Ryan Wesley Routh, is shot at. We don't have any reports, Curtis, at this point that the person was hit, but they book it. You run out of the woods, get back to their car, some kind of Nissan SUV, and take off. Again, a witness apparently saw this happen, take a photo of the guy's license plate, and authorities used license plate reader technology to try to look for this guy, find him on I-95, cops pull him over, and they basically say the guy showed calm demeanor, didn't ask, why am I being pulled over? What's going on here? Nothing like that. We've heard from the FBI since this was an apparent assassination attempt. Secret Service and some of the sheriff's departments involved, they gave a press conference as well in the last few hours. So again, just over 2 months, first one, Pennsylvania, at a rally, this time, former President Trump, about 300 to 500 yards away, an AK-47 style rifle with a scope mounted, took aim out of the fence line. Some suspect later identified as Ryan Wesley Routh. And I can tell you a little bit more about that guy as well, Curtis, but that's kind of the timeline we have in terms of what went down today. The shots fired around 1:30. About an hour later, the suspect clearly in custody as far as we know, and then information started to trickle out from both reporting and authorities. Here, what is it? A little after 8 o'clock on the East Coast, Ryan Wesley Routh, a 58-year-old guy, originally from North Carolina, spent some time in Hawaii, and all kinds of information coming out about his profile on social media and stuff like that.
Well, we're going to get to that momentarily at 8:15. Andrew Giuliani will join us live. He has been President Donald Trump's golf partner many times. Many times he's been playing with Trump on Trump's Trump International Golf Course, where this attempted assassination occurred at 2 p.m. earlier on Sunday in West Palm Beach. Question here. You mentioned that Ryan Wesley Routh is the gunman. Interesting. All of these guys, 3 names. Ryan Wesley Routh, this gunman. The previous gunman, we'll get back to that later on in the program, Thomas Matthews Crooks. It's 63 days since that attempted assassination. And one that I mentioned to my wife, Nancy, who joins us tonight, the moment it was mentioned that Ryan Wesley Routh was based in Hawaii and had come to Florida, is Mark David Chapman. As you know, assassin of John Lennon, shot at him 5 times, hit him 4 times in the back. He had come from Hawaii, and he's presently at Green Haven Prison, triple life without parole. But it is tremendously interesting because, not to pat myself on the back, but if you remember right after the President of the United States, Donald Trump, decimated Joe Biden in that debate in Atlanta, I said to you in front of others here at WABC, they're going to try to kill him now. They're definitely going to try to take out Trump. Unfortunately.
No, you're right, Curtis. You're absolutely right, because, I mean, it was such a stark thing that happened in that debate in August, where the world kind of had its blinders removed in terms of a lot of us in the news media, I know I can speak for you as well, knew how diminished Biden was, right? There's only so much you can hide when you look at it all the time, as opposed to somebody who just watches a news bite on the 11 o'clock news or something like that. So you said, look, out of the bag now, something's going to happen here. Someone or something is going to strike at Trump. And I remember hearing you saying it and thinking, I hate to say it, but I think he might be right. And it wasn't long after that, obviously, that we had, or I guess it was in June, actually, that first debate, not in August. It was in June that we had that first debate. It was such a disaster for Biden and whoever it was that was trying to prop him up, that you said they're going to have to take a shot at the guy. You were absolutely right. I mean, you couldn't have been more right in many ways. And that's exactly what happened. And here it happened again 2 months after the fact.
And we're not getting serious about this at all. President Donald Trump is a target. The Iranians, the Ayatollah, issued a fatwa to kill him 5 days before he appeared in Butler, Pennsylvania, before a crowd of 50,000 MAGA fans. They never informed the president and his staff, his campaign staff. They never increased the Secret Service allotted to him. And now he does not have the kind of Secret Service protection that a sitting president would have. You think maybe they're going to finally wake up and understand that those that want him dead are not going to stop. I
should hope so. I mean, I think that at this point, it's kind of like a 2 strikes, 3 strikes. We don't want to get to 3 strikes, you know? So I think you're absolutely right. I feel the pressure is going to be really on here from all corners to basically say this can't go on. You need to give full presidential protection. Let's try to put it in context, Curtis. If, in fact, there had been full presidential protection for Trump in this instance at the golf course, the roadways surrounding the golf course would have been shut down. Now, the golf course was partially shut down, apparently, while the former president was golfing here. But you did not have those surrounding roadways closed down, obviously, because that's how this guy got in and drove his SUV and went into the wooded area and had the gun pointing out and stuff like that. I'll just throw this back out there at you guys, both Nancy included in this, because Nancy's such a good researcher online and somebody who's great about doing the deep dive. This guy has a very kind of bizarre background. I mean, he's from North Carolina. You mentioned the Hawaii connection. He spent time or lives in Hawaii, I guess. He spent time in Ukraine. This guy is really, really, really into the Ukraine-Russia war. He went to Kyiv. He tried to fight in the war. They said, you're too old. He tried to help recruit people to come fight there. He tried to raise funds for the war there. I watched a video before I came on with you guys. It's about 10 minutes long, where he's talking about how this is a war that only the good could ever be on the one side and the evil are on the other side and stuff like that. So this guy really, really believes, you know, what he's been told, for example, about that particular conflict. And it's just kind of fascinating to see how that then seemingly played into his motivations in carrying out this alleged attempt.
Well, the other thing is he was recruiting for the International Brigade, the form of a French Foreign Legion for the Ukraine that Zelensky got started right at the start when Putin invaded Ukraine and was right on the outskirts of Kyiv at that particular time. So he has been a major recruiter, obviously is a wannabe mercenary. As you mentioned, because of his age, they basically said, hey, pal, go back to the United States and help in other ways. But I got to tell you, if this ain't a wake-up call now, I hate to be Nostradamus on this, but 10 days after the attempted assassination of Trump in Butler, when unbeknownst to us, although I had, again, predicted this, I said, don't be surprised when we ask what happened to Sniper Boy if all of a sudden Thomas Matthew Crook's remains turns up as ashes in an urn. And everybody laughed at me, and guess what? That's what happened. So now, FBI, Secret Service, if you wanted to get this guy, you'd send a freaking drone. Wake up, make sure the skies are clear, make sure nobody's around this man who has a very good chance of becoming president of the United States again, and do your freaking jobs. This guy was sitting in a lawn chair, ready to whack the president while playing golf 500 yards away. He would have had a clear shot. What is wrong with these people? I mean, enough is enough. I want to hit his bull schnizzle. Oh, well, we had an advanced team. Give him full presidential protection and stop the bull schnizzle. I've never in my life heard of 2 separate attempts on a former president of the United States, never mind a sitting president of the United States. You think this is a wake-up call, James Flippin?
It certainly should be. It begs the question as to not so much how more isn't being done, but why. It really does. I mean, I'm sorry, but I think just from any kind of perspective, whether it's someone who is supporting former President Trump, somebody who just believes in the continuance of, elective democracy and all that kind of thing, anybody who's looking at it from a journalistic perspective. Why?
Well,
why would there not have been more done when you had something happen like you did 2 months ago?
Well, later on, I'll tell you how sad it was that 10-10 wins that I was listening to didn't even have that as their number one story. I'll repeat that later on. What a disgrace. Flippin', we'll get back to you at 8:35 for continued updates all night long. One story alone, the attempted assassination, second time of President Donald Trump. Nobody knows this president better than Andrew Giuliani, especially when it comes to joining him and going out and golfing the various circuits that he occasionally goes out and tees off from, especially this particular Trump International Golf Course. Thanks for joining us again, Andrew.
Of course, Curtis. Yeah, and you've said it. I've been to that golf course 100 times, 150 times or so, probably played with the president 50 times there. And I think James did a really good job of painting a picture for the listening audience in terms of what that looks like. Where this incident happened was on the fifth hole of his golf course. And if anybody is looking at a map of the golf course, it's the easternmost part of the golf course. To the north of the golf course, you have the West Palm Beach Airport, if anybody's flown into Palm Beach International Airport. And then to the east of the golf course, Congress Avenue runs right on that fifth hole. It's a par 4 that goes right to the property line right there. And there are definitely times that I've seen when he is not there, when the president is not there, the former president is not there, that you can see through that fence line. They do a good job with the hedging, so it is tough to actually see through, but you will see the cars kind of going by. What I remember when he was president of the United States, they would shut down Congress Road whenever he hole right there, and any of the fourth hole, the sixth hole, the hole before it, the hole after it, to make sure, because they knew, as you said before, 5 yards away, you actually can even get, if you didn't shut down that road, you probably get about let's call it 50 to 75 yards away, certainly within 100 yards, within a football field of the president. Head in and try to see golfers going by right there. But the fact that this happened again to the former president just over 2 months from Butler, Pennsylvania, is extremely unnerving. And to me, you said it there as well, Curtis. The Secret Service needs to being more in coordination with local PD. I know certainly that the Palm Beach Sheriff's Office loves President Trump down there. They've done joint golf outings and all that where they've actually hosted their fundraising stuff at Trump International Golf Club and at Mar-a-Lago. But something was very, very clearly and very obviously missed there. If you could get a couple 100 yards away from the president, again, just over 2 months after this assassination attempt.
Well, Andrew, what really turns me apoplectic is that, and you can explain this because you've golfed with the president when he was a sitting president, and now you've golfed with him as the former president. What is the difference in terms of the number of agents who are part of the detail when you're president and now that he has an assigned Secret Service agent team as a former president and the leading candidate to become president again?
Good question. Before the Butler, Pennsylvania assassination attempt, there was a very, very big difference from where he was, let's call it, in June of this year to when he was president. I would say 75% less in terms of the agents. They weren't wanding cars whenever they would come in. As soon as the Butler assassination attempt ended up happening, anytime the president, and since I've played with him on occasion at his Bedminster Golf Club, I haven't played professional, but anytime he is on property, they have wanded they have the dogs that are sniffing out for potential bombs, and they're checking to make sure that you don't have any weapons. whenever you come on site. So it definitely has ramped up, Curtis. What I would say is it's not quite presidential level yet, but it certainly felt close. The one difference, Curtis, that I could see more than anything, because, wanding of the cars, that would happen to me every single day whenever I would go into the White House. They would go and they would look and they'd make sure there are no explosives, no guns, or that they would catch something the Secret Service would miss. But the one place that I noticed that was different was actually riding around with him on the golf course. Used to be, when he was president, call it about 40 carts or so between the hole that he was on, the hole behind, and certainly the hole in front, where they would go and they would use the magnometers to make sure that people didn't have. It didn't seem like there was about half as many recently. And before that, you're probably talking only 6 or 7 were around him as of June. And maybe because that's not a presidential level, maybe they missed something. Maybe they didn't get it until after people to put his rifle through the fence line, as has been reported. I haven't heard that from Secret Service. I haven't heard that from the former president. That's just hearing in some of the reporting that may have happened. And by the way, if that report is correct, and excuse me if James or if Nancy has poo-pooed that report, because I haven't seen the exact details yet. But if he did actually get the rifle through the fence line, then you're talking only about 50 yards or so away from where the president can be. That fence line is right up there on that hole. I'm not sure, again, if that is true or not. That's just a report that I had heard. But definitely it is ramped up, but nowhere near what it was when he was president.
What is very disturbing is that, forget the fact that his name is Donald Trump. Yeah. We have an enemy, the Ayatollah, who issued a fatwa against him. That is a death sentence. We've had one Pakistani who was stopped on his return trip to Iran, who was here specifically to put together a hit team to whack Donald Trump. There's no other way to describe it, like an organized hit team that he was putting together. We have not retaliated. We have not threatened the Iranians. This is a second attempt. It does not appear to be linked to the Iranians. But then again, we still don't know about the first attempt with this Thomas Matthew Crooks and the encrypted messages that they claim they can't break. So I'm of the opinion now to say, in addition to whatever the federal government is going to allot to the president, the biggest fear I have for Donald Trump's welfare, and for the welfare of guys like yourself who accompanied Trump and his family and his friends and all the MAGA folks who go to his rallies, is they have suicide drones now. We see it all over the world. Mm-hmm. It doesn't take much to organize one from a mile away. One person with one stick guiding a drone could do tremendous damage. And to be honest, Butler County, they didn't even have their own drones. I don't know if they had any drones over the golf course or they had any monitoring devices. But what are they waiting for, Andrew? I'm not a military person. I didn't operate, involved in intel with a police department. But common sense will tell you they're going to keep trying to kill this guy.
Yeah. And Curtis, to your point there, and certainly I'm not a military guy myself as well, but I've sat through probably, 150 to 200 Secret Service briefings looking at off-site stuff. And going back to got 160 yards away. Of course, I work in yards as a golfer, but less than 500 feet away from the former president. I've seen Secret Service shut down buildings and put in bulletproof glass if they're worried about a building a mile and a half away, more than 15 times the amount of distance that shooter at Butler, Pennsylvania got. They don't miss that if they don't want to miss that. That was my take in seeing all the information, seeing the lack of transparency, the fact that we still have questions. Where is the intellectual curiosity about the first assassination attempt? I certainly hope we see the intellectual curiosity about this attempt, because we need answers. And you said it right, Curtis. Doesn't matter if the guy's name is Donald Trump or Joe Biden or Kamala Harris or George Bush or politics don't matter on this. This is not what our politics is about. And Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, right now, they should be meeting in the Situation Room, and they should be getting the answers about what the heck happened today, because the American people deserve it. Doesn't matter if you're red, doesn't matter if you're blue. You need to make sure that your presidential candidates, that your political candidates, that they're protected in a democracy. Talk to democracy. I heard Kamala Harris say threat to democracy in this last debate. Well, I'll tell you what, you've had now this president, it seems like 2 attempts on his life just this summer alone. Where's the intellectual curiosity, Curtis?
I want you to hear this cut. He said it in the debate. It registered in my mind because I've been so focused on the attempts on his life and what I think are going to be future attempts if we don't get our house in order. In the middle of this debate with Vice President Harris, he talked about the attempt on him and the attempt to stifle him. Listen.
Someone who has openly expressed disdain for members of our military. Understand what it would mean if Donald Trump were back in the White House with no guardrails, because certainly we know now the court won't stop him. We know J.D. Vance is not going to stop him. It's up to the American people.
Vice President Harris, thank you. Lindsay?
Vice President Harris, in your last run for president.
Weaponized, please. This is the one that weaponized, not me. She weaponized. I probably took a bullet to the head because of the things that they say about me. They talk about democracy. I'm a threat to democracy. They're the threat to democracy with a fake Russia investigation that went nowhere.
The president, Donald Trump himself, painted this for the nation and the world to hear. When you continue to drum into people's minds, whether it's an organized attempt or it's an attempt by somebody who is emotionally disturbed or they feel like they're on a mission, Andrew, they feel like it's almost as if in that case, Vice President Harris is saying to them, this guy is a threat. If he gets in there, it's over. America is over. We got to take him out. She's not saying shoot him. She's not saying kill him. But they've got to watch their words.
They've been relating him to a dictator. They've been relating him to Hitler. They've been, you're absolutely right. They've been calling him a threat to democracy. They call Trump absolutely every single name in the book. They literally have convicted him of absolute, in my opinion, bogus charges when you look at this. Not just my opinion, by the way, the Southern District of New York's opinion, a Biden Southern District of New York, a Biden-appointed Southern District of New York high official said that on camera just this last week. They've gone after him legally. They've gone after him every single possible way that you can. And I think you're absolutely right, Curtis. When you look at this stuff, and they've talked so much on the left before about, what you say matters. I can't tell you how many news stories I heard that when President Trump was in office and President Trump would say something that's not typical of your typical politician, right? Just like many New Yorkers, just like many people, New Yorkers in real estate, he was not he's never has been the most measured in terms of what he says. I think it's why people are drawn to him, because he's genuine, whether you like him, whether or not. Donald Trump is a genuine person. So for years, I heard them say, well, what Trump is saying, it's inciting violence. He's drumming up the crazies here on this. But that's not a two-way street over here. And what they've been calling him for the last so many years, a dictator coming in, I think you're absolutely right. I think there are some people that hear that and hear that mantra repeated time and time again. And in their crazy mind, they might think that they're doing a service to democracy, if you will, by potentially taking out that threat to democracy that they hear about. Now, again, Curtis, looking at this and seeing the second attempt on his life there, knowing how they would shut down that Congress road there, how they would always have Secret Service agents outside of that Congress road whenever he was actually golfing on that side of the golf course as president, then it just makes me wonder and gives me more and more questions. What happened? Why the lapsed security for a second time potentially here. And Curtis, here's another important point too. Golfing was not on his public schedule. It's not like a rally where, people knew that he was going to be out there golfing at 2 p.m., at 1:30 p.m. They didn't know that, right? How did this person find out? Now, maybe this person staked it out, right? They know that President Trump is going to be in Florida. There's a chance on a Sunday afternoon coming out that he's going to be there, and maybe he staked it out. But it is pretty coincidental when this was not on a public schedule that this shooter was actually there and had an opportunity potentially to assassinate the 45th and 7th President of the United States.
One last thing, Andrew. In about a week, we are going to see the annual march of the totalitarian dictators, the despots, into New York City, tying us up in knots as they meet in the United Nations General Assembly. Everything is done to protect our enemies when they come here. Maximum security. You look up on the buildings. You've grown up here. You've seen that when your daddy was the mayor, and he made sure that all these people were protected. Even Yasser Arafat that he threw out of Lincoln Center. The point is, you couldn't go near any of these leaders. They had snipers on the roofs. You couldn't go down streets. Everyone was safe and secure. These were some of the most heinous individuals where people were looking to assassinate them, and this would have been the perfect place. How is it we can protect enemies of America so well when they visit with us here? And we cannot protect a man who was the president, is the leading candidate to become president again, and now it's 2 times up. What the hell are they waiting for?
Curtis, I'm baffled like you are, and I think that's a great analogy. I know my father always talked about that UN week and how he hated that UN week because of the amount of anti-Semites that would come in, the amount of people that would dodge and use diplomatic immunity for assaults on women, all kinds of things that ended up happening. The parking tickets, not to even mention the parking tickets, and you documented the Arafat incident, Kim kicking him out of there as well. But he always felt that it was his responsibility to make sure that did not happen in New York, that whatever he thought about these guys, how terrible he thought that they were, that he was going to make sure that New York did not live with the burden of an assassination happening on New York soil. And that's why, New Yorkers have lived with the lockdown of UN General Assembly Week for the decades and decades that's been happening. And it's certainly a lockdown that we'll be hearing more and more about next week. But I think that's a great analogy. Why on earth do these crazies, these despots, these world leaders have the security here in New York, but we can't protect a former president of the United States and the leading candidate for president of the United States as well? It baffles my mind.
Well, be safe, Andrew. I know President Trump will continue to golf. He won't let this stop him. He has his huge rallies coming up, of which you are oftentimes there. He's got a big one at Nassau Community Coliseum that's taking place this Wednesday night, and a number of other open-air venues in which there may be 100,000 people or more. So be safe, make sure Trump is safe, and let's keep the pressure on, because this is intolerable. This is a black mark on our country when we don't prioritize the safety of our candidates running for president. First, it was RFK Jr. It was like pulling teeth to get him protected. And the guy now, twice, and I got to tell you this. I tuned in at 10 wins, get an update. They didn't even have it as its lead story.
Amazing, Curtis. No, look, you said it, Curtis. You absolutely said it, and thank God he's safe. And let's pray that we don't hear another breaking news attempted assassination of President Trump or any of our political leaders, because you know what? Next time that we get that breaking news story, we might have to drop the attempted, and that's the thing that obviously scares all of us. And guess what? I vehemently disagree with Kamala Harris. I think she might be a quasi-Marxist if you listen to her. But you know what? She should be protected. She should be able, in the public sphere, to be able to go out there and express her opinions, what she believes for the United States of America, and she should not be harmed in doing that. And the same is true for Donald Trump. The same is true for all of our political candidates.
Thank you, Andrew Giuliani, for giving us this live update. Be safe out there. Convey our good wishes to the president and all those who are accompanying him, because they're in the gun sights. I just fear a drone attack. Please alert them that they got to watch the skies next. They've tried every other measure. They've got to watch the skies. We'll be back with a James Flippin update up next on the attempted assassination, if you're just joining us. Second within 63 days of Donald Trump.
WABC. The following is a paid political announcement.
This November, down-ballot victories are more important than in any past election. Presenting the Get Out and Vote Republican campaign. The purpose is to reach local conservative and Republican voters, to drive them to vote, and to vote down ballot on party lines. Get out and vote in this crucial election year. Vote down ballot on party lines. Get out and vote Republican.
I am Paul King, candidate for Congress in New York 5. I approve this message.
Paid for by Paul King for Congress.
Hi, and welcome to IKEA. How can I help?
Oh, my schedule is crazy. I just want some me time.
Maybe it's time to embrace the joy of staying in. With comfortable beds, pillow and decor, mood lighting, and so much more, you can turn your bedroom into the place to be.
Oh, sounds like a dream.
We've got you. Visit us in-store or at IKEA-USA.com/sleep to create your dream bedroom today.
Hi. Sorry, did I startle you? When you're used to hearing a certain type of commercial, something like this can, well, take you by surprise. That's kind of how it is with the Lexus RX, a vehicle that has continued to defy expectations for over 25 years. From the first luxury vehicle of its kind, to the first hybrid luxury vehicle, to the only plug-in hybrid worthy of the RX name. We understand you want more than the everyday SUV. And isn't being understood an amazing feeling? Experience amazing at your Lexus dealer.
Talk Radio 77 WABC.
Another assassination attempt on former President Donald Trump.
The status on President Trump.
Now the latest from 77 WABC. Here's Curtis Sliwa.
And once again, as I sit here in the studios with Nancy, who is looking at the social network profile of the gunman he who has been captured, Ryan Wesley Ruth of Hawaii. She'll give us an update on all of his postings, things that he has said. We'll try to give you a composite on that, along with James Flippin, who once again joins us, gave us the late-breaking news when we were broadcasting to the world now that it's dark. The number one station in the world depending on us to give an update on this attempted assassination, round 2 of President Donald Trump. What more can you tell us, James?
Well, Curtis, Nancy, it's been about 7 hours since this all kicked off. It would have been 1:30 on the East Coast when shots fired came in, that 911 call, shots fired at Trump International Golf Club, West Palm Beach, about 10 minutes west as far as driving from Mar-a-Lago Club. And I guess Trump was getting ready to putt on the 5th hole. He was lining up his putt, and then all of a sudden agents tackled him to the ground. In theory, there was another group of agents kind of scouting out ahead of time, building out the security detail, maybe at, say, hole 7, if you will. And that's where these 4 shots were fired at the suspect that you mentioned, Curtis, Ruth, not exactly sure how you pronounce the guy's name, but 4 shots rang out. That was actually agents firing at the suspect. Now, the would-be assassin fled, ran from his little sniper's nest in a wooded area right along the golf course, and then that suspect was later apprehended in a nearby county by sheriff department deputies. Left back at the sniper's nest, would-be sniper's nest, an AK-47 type weapon, a long gun, a rifle. There was a folding chair there. The guy had hung up several bags that had ceramic tiles in them to act as like a bulletproof or body armor type function. There was also a GoPro camera with this guy's stuff. So you would think that the attempted assassination was going to be broadcast or recorded in some way. Now, one of the things you've been talking about, Curtis, and it's worth noting, right now, former President Trump does not have a full presidential level of Secret Service protection. So the same barrier, the same border that you might imagine that would be protected for a president is not afforded to a former president in this case.
And yet, James Flippin, as I mentioned, within a week, we will have a complete detail of federal agents, local NYPD, local county, state troopers protecting the worst despots, dictators, tyrants, enemies of America, making sure that they are safe and secure for the week when they come to meet in the General Assembly, which is our responsibility. None has ever been harmed. We can do all of that for them, but we can't do this for Trump. I mean, come on. It seems purposeful. It seems like this is being done purposefully.
Yeah, I mean, hard to respond to that with what's happened here over just today, and then you connect it to just over 2 months ago in Butler, Pennsylvania. But it would have been about, I guess, 3:45 when the White House came out and said, okay, we've been briefed on this situation. Vice President Harris sent the message out on X, violence never tolerated, happy that nothing happened here, that kind of thing. And we also, around that same time, had a report from the Associated Press that agents actually saw the gun muzzle come out of the fence line, that shots were fired in that direction. The suspect fled. We still don't know, I think, at this point, whether or not the suspect was actually hit by any gunfire, but they did flee the scene, arrested, found through the use of license plate reader technology. And then there's some stuff that's out there on social media. This guy, Ruth Ryan Wesley, 58 years old, lived in Hawaii, spent time in North Carolina, spent some time in Ukraine. There's also an interview making the rounds on social media, Curtis. I don't know if you've seen this. It's about 10 minutes long. It was first recorded by Newsweek, where this guy, Ralph, was explaining his motivations behind being in Ukraine and trying to recruit fighters for their war effort against Russia.
Yeah, no, Nancy has acquired a bit of that. We're going to play that coming up. Can you check, though, I think it's incumbent upon you and our news director, Noam Laden. In Butler, Pennsylvania, there were no drones. Secret Service was offered drones. They rejected it from the Butler County Sheriff's Departments. They didn't even have their own drones. Sniper Boy had his drone, Thomas Matthew Crooks, 2 hours before Donald Trump was scheduled to get on that stage and speak to 50,000 MAGA supporters. 2 hours before, he's flying a freaking drone around the area. Could you find out if they had a drone hovering over the golf course? Further protection from potentially an aerial attack? Because you know that's coming up next nowadays. All we read about all over the world right now are drone attacks. Doesn't take much to connect the dots. Any idiot can fly a drone. You don't have to be an expert of any type to be able to fly a drone, weaponize a drone, and do harm.
Yeah, so you're saying you want to know whether or not the Secret Service was flying them there at the golf course.
Everywhere he goes. Everywhere he goes. If he stops to use the bathroom, right, in a portisan along the roadside, then they have a drone flying overhead.
I'll have to ask. I'll have to put the request into the Secret Service. We got
to put the screws to these people because they go on. They act like, no big thing.
The last time I contacted them, it was to ask them if anybody had been put on administrative leave in wake of the Butler incident. And I think you probably remember, Curtis, they said anything will be properly disclosed through the proper channels and, all that kind of stuff. So I'll see. I'll put a request in as far as what they do with drones, but I'm not confident I'll get a good response.
Do you realize 63 days later and the FBI has not even broken through the encrypted messages that the sniper in Butler County was having in his communications with people in New Zealand, people in Germany, and people in Belgium? 63 days later, and they were asked, I'm going to play that cut in the next hour, and they still haven't they haven't cracked those encrypted messages. 63 days later, 2 months.
Hard to believe.
No, it's not hard to believe. You just don't trust the government. Maybe finally people will get around to the point of view that you cannot trust this government because they're always coming up with excuses. Here's another lame excuse. He goes out, he plays golf. Everybody knows that Donald Trump plays golf. He loves golf. That's his way of breaking the tension. That's his ability to break away from being indoors all the time. You can't even protect him doing that. You can't even create a corridor, a safe corridor for him to be able to go out and shoot 18 holes of golf. What kind of federal agencies do we have that a guy is sitting in a freaking lawn chair with an AK-47 stuck to a fence, waiting for President Trump to pull up, to get out of his golf cart, to hit his ball towards the green, and he's going to whack him?
It's really, I mean, just to hear you say it out loud, Curtis, it's all the more stunning that it happened this way. And, I mean, it really begs the question, what if this guy, right, like he's using a scope, and they say the distance from which Trump was not that far away, easily taken care of with a rifle and a scope. What if the guy hadn't put the gun muzzle outside of the fence? What if he was just aiming from some tree behind in the woods or something like that? I mean, what would we be talking about right now?
There are groups of men, as you know, James Flippin, who stay up in a tree for like 24 hours as hunters.
Right.
Hidden behind blinds where you can't even see them, waiting for a bear or a deer to come by. You don't have to connect a lot of dots on this. How many warnings does the Secret Service and the FBI need to say, man, we got to lock down everything? This guy, nobody comes near this guy. Nobody.
Well,
This is an embarrassment.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw the press conference in full that the Secret Service and the sheriff held there in whatever county that is, West Palm County. I actually don't know what county it is. And the guy ends the press conference by saying, you should be proud of your people in law enforcement. Now, look, we're here at 77 WABC, as you know, Curtis, is pro-law enforcement as it gets. And I think that there is a difference between whatever the systemic failures or potentially something more nefarious, what's going on here. But in essence, they got lucky again, right? Like, yeah, it's great that an agent saw that rifle muzzle and fired and answered to the threat and stopped it from going any further. But what if that didn't happen today?
James.
In essence, they got lucky.
James, we walk out here in the streets of New York, everything is filmed. Do you think they might put cameras up when they know that President Trump is coming into an area so that every square inch is under surveillance? You think? I mean, how difficult is that?
Yeah. I don't know if maybe they got kind of lulled to, this is like home territory. I mean, we talk about this is a 10-minute drive away from his house, basically. Well,
we're gonna do a deep dive into who this guy is as best we can. Nancy has been compiling the information on Ryan Wesley Ruth, another guy with 3 names. I've always said never trust him. Remember Thomas Matthew Crooks, the last attempted assassin, and as I mentioned, just like Ryan Wesley Ruth came in from Hawaii to try to whack Donald Trump on the golf course, Mark David Chapman, where did he come in from? Hawaii, to kill John Lennon while he was reading J.D. Salinger's The Catcher in the Rye and wanted to be right. He wanted to be exactly like the protagonist, emulate Holden Caulfield. We got to find out more about this guy. And we're going to get to it here at WABC, your place to be. You don't have 880 AM WCBS any longer. You have a friend of your own now that gives you news and information. Not like its sister station, 1010, when I tuned it on. This was the second story. The attempted assassination of Donald Trump. What was more important than this 1010 wins? Oh, That's right. You're owned by George Soros now. That's right. You're owned by George Soros now.
WABC. With the $5 meal deal at McDonald's, you pick a McDouble or a McChicken, then get a small fry, a small drink, and a 4-piece McNuggets. That's a lot of McDonald's for not a lot of money.
Price and participation may vary. For a limited time only.
ABC Wednesday. It's the premiere everyone is talking about.
I'm Joan, and I'm your first Golden Bachelorette.
Loves getting a second chance.
When you're 61 years old, you have very few opportunities to change your life. I have to be ready.
The Golden Bachelorette is proving romance never ages.
I represent millions of people in their golden years looking for love.
The Golden Bachelorette.
I am ready to find the next great love of my life.
Series premiere Wednesday on ABC and stream on Hulu.
Another assassination attempt on former President Donald Trump.
The status on President Trump.
Now the latest from 77 WABC. Here's Curtis Sliwa.
Nancy, before they scrub all of his social networking, because that's what they always do, Silicon Valley always takes down everyone's information. God forbid we actually know who this guy is. Like we can't handle the truth. What do we know about Ryan Wesley Ruth, the attempted assassin, number 2, of Donald Trump today at his golf course at Trump International?
Okay, so one thing that hasn't been scrubbed yet is his LinkedIn profile. And it lists him as owner of, hang on, wait, I hope they're not trying to scrub it now. Okay, 1 second. Owner at Camp Box Honolulu. So, what he basically was focusing on was building simple economical structures to help address the homelessness rate in the United States due to unparalleled gentrification. So, he starts, sort of soliciting business there and then saying he's just a creative type of guy and reach out to him with any opportunities and he's willing to relocate anywhere in the world. Just let him know. So very curious LinkedIn. So that's the first one. Now he had a profile that was up on Twitter. I actually saw it maybe like half an hour ago, but they've since suspended the account. So apparently it violates the rules, so they suspended the account. I guess that's just knowing some of the things that he was saying. But there was a lot of screenshots taken already, so you can see, some of the indications of like what he was writing, like the different, things that he was saying. So yeah, so let's see. Now clearly he's, the idea that he's very big into the Ukraine is definitely an understatement because he has. Multitudes of, either stories about him going to the Ukraine where now this is weird because I don't quite understand this. Like, I've never heard of this. Like you were mentioning this whole thing about, him trying to join himself, the effort in Ukraine, but it almost seems like he is a headhunter for people who want to join the military in Ukraine.
Yeah, the International Legion, which was set up by Zelensky about 2 weeks after the invasion by Putin when tanks were right outside Kyiv. He realized, Zelensky, he did not have enough personnel with experience, experienced fighters. So he came about and created his own French Foreign Legion. He called it the International Legion. There were Americans who got involved, Canadians, other Europeans. They flooded into the area. They actually assisted Ukraine in a number of ways in the field of battle, without which the Ukrainians would not have had enough time to develop their own troops to get them war ready to take on the invading Russians. So you had some of the best experienced warriors around the world immediately coming into the Ukraine to join their effort, and they all fought under the banner of the International Legion for the Ukraine. Highly valued, many of them killed, many of them taken captive by the Russians. They were considered quite the prize. So I could easily see what his function was. In fact, we have the tape that you found of the interview that he was doing with Newsweek in Kyiv when he was recruiting for the International Legion for the Ukraine, foreign fighters to come in to supplement Zelensky's fighters against Putin's Russians.
Tell me who you are and why are you here?
I'm 56 from the U.S., from North Carolina originally, so live in Hawaii now, so flew all the way from Hawaii here. So the question as far as why I'm here, to me, a lot of the other conflicts are gray, but this conflict is definitely black and white. This is about good versus evil. This is a storybook, any movie we've ever watched, this is definitely evil against good. I mean, we're battling a situation here where the Ukrainians and the rest of the world are caring and kind and generous and unselfish and take care of one another. And it's just a matter of, we need to stand up for that. That is the most important thing in the world, is just to show human beings that we're kind and we're caring and that we take care of one another and that the world is united so that we feed each other and make sure that, we all move forward as one collective whole unit. So, we feel the pain of one country's failure and their conflicts, and we enjoy the successes of other countries that are doing good, and we all work together. And for some reason, Russia does not grasp this concept that we're all one unit, and we have to get along and work together and be normal human beings. This is 2022. We have to work together. It seems asinine that we have a leader in a country that does not understand the concept of being unselfish and being generous and being kind and just the basic moral values that are required by human beings these days. It blows my mind.
Yeah. Blows his mind. Meantime, on X itself, best known as Twitter, on April 22nd, he posted, democracy is on the ballot and we cannot lose. Donald Trump is a threat to democracy. This is exactly what we had in our discussion in this first hour. These leaders keep saying that Donald Trump is a threat to democracy, and then individuals like this, they hear it, they read it, and then they want to act on it, and they want to go out and they want to kill Donald Trump. In the meantime, the president and the vice president says, gee, great to see that Donald Trump is still alive. Oh, I'll bet you that was real heartfelt.
This episode is brought to you by Buffalo Trace Distillery. Powerful yet smooth. Contained but never tame. Proudly going their own way, but never going alone. This is the spirit inside Buffalo Trace Bourbon. Made at Buffalo Trace Distillery, the world's most award-winning distillery. Buffalo Trace is always perfectly untamed. Distilled, aged, and bottled by Buffalo Trace Distillery, Franklin County, Kentucky. 90 proof, 45% alcohol by volume. Learn more at buffalotracedistillery.com. Please drink responsibly.
Ready to ring in the new semester? Pink's got A-plus styles for heading back to campus. Made for early morning classes, midday coffee runs, and late-night study sessions. Their latest looks are everything you need to pass with flying colors. We're talking tanks that go with literally every fit, parachute pants with a throwback 90s vibe, plus cute sweaters, activewear, and so much more. Shop now at pink.com or get 15% off in Pink stores with a valid student ID. Exclusions apply.
Another assassination attempt on former President Donald Trump.
The status on President Trump.
Now the latest from 77 WABC. Here's Curtis Sliwa.
From now on, you always come to WABC if you are forlorn for the loss of 880 AM WCBS. It may have been your go-to news station. Fear not, you have WABC because its sister station, 1010 Wins. I'm ashamed to say, in the 7 o'clock hour, the primary story they were leading with was not even the attempted assassination of Donald Trump. How the hell could that not be your main story? It should be your only freaking story, 1010 Wins. And it has been our only story since we came on the air after Joe Piscopo. Once again, our news guy, James Flippin, What breaking details can you give us, as many listeners who have been out during the day are focusing on this and tuning into WABC as we work our way through the break of dawn?
Well, Curtis and Nancy, it was around 1:30 this afternoon when a 911 call came in. Shots had been fired at Trump International Golf Course in West Palm Beach, Florida. The suspect in this incident, later identified as 58-year-old Ryan Wesley Ruth. And this is a guy who apparently did not fire those shots that we just told you about. In fact, it was Secret Service agents who shot at him. What happened was Trump was getting ready to putt, I should say, at about hole 5 on the golf course. And the Secret Service agents, what they do is they go out a couple of holes ahead and they scout out the location. They want to build out a security perimeter. They want to check out for anything and see if everything's okay. Well, one of those agents that was scouting saw a gun muzzle come out of the fence line. This guy, this suspect that we've identified now as Ryan Wesley Ruth, was sitting there in an easy chair, had bags with ceramic tiles, bulletproof tiles, had a bag with a GoPro camera, and was taking aim with this AK-47 style rifle that had a scope mounted on it. Gun comes out, agent fires at him, this guy takes off, runs out of the woods and to his SUV. Now, it just so happens there was a witness nearby who saw the suspect doing that, took a photo of their license plate, shared that with the sheriff's department. Sheriff's deputies were able to get that up into the computer system. License plate reader technology then found the guy on Interstate 95. A separate sheriff's county department pulled the guy over. Apparently he was calm demeanor, didn't ask why he was being pulled over, nothing of that nature, was taken into custody. We don't know if any of those shots that were fired actually wounded this suspect, but we do know that Trump is okay. He was never actually fired upon in this particular instance. The shots that were fired by the Secret Service agents essentially chased the guy away, and he was then arrested somewhat nearby on Interstate 95. And so just 2 months and a couple of days past the first assassination attempt in Butler, Pennsylvania, we had another incident where about maybe 300 to 500 yards away from former President Trump, a guy had an AK-47 with a scope mounted. Later, this suspect identified as Ryan Wesley Ruth.
So this guy definitely wanted this broadcast to the world. But in your explanation of what he was doing, awaiting the arrival of Donald Trump in his golf cart with his foursome and the other Secret Service agents accompanying him as he was playing the course, he's sitting in an easy chair. First of all, how the hell did he get an easy chair in there without it being spotted? It's like a beautiful afternoon. He's sitting in an easy chair, right? Probably having a few beers. He's got his AK-47 in his hand, putting it through the fence so that he has an unrestricted shot at the green, which is near the fence. And there was nobody checking that out in advance?
Well, I mean, all I can tell you is that we know that Trump does not have the full presidential level of Secret Service protection. So what that means in this context is that the roadways ringing the golf course, okay, there's roads, normal roads that anybody can have access to on the outside of the golf course, they weren't closed down. They're able to be accessed. And I guess the golf course itself was partially shut down in response to Trump playing. And at the end of the day, it is his golf course, so I don't think that's so crazy. But yeah, in terms of the actual access to the site and what kind of surveillance is afforded and how much agency and law enforcement is involved in kind of checking those perimeters, it would seem to be not so robust, or else obviously you wouldn't think this guy's going to get in there with a folding chair and a bag and some kind of a long gun. Maybe that was set up or reconstructed by the time he got in there to the wooded area. But like we said in one of our last times checking in on the story, Curtis, really crazy to think about the fact that if this guy, at least per what we've been told in reporting, hadn't stuck the muzzle of the gun out from the fence, which was visible to the scouting agent coming by. It's not like they had infrared technology and said, ooh, there's somebody there in the woods, somebody's out there, or something a little more sophisticated. Supposedly, an agent put eyes on the guy, saw the gun, fired. All it took to kind of avert potential disaster here.
Unbelievable. Imagine, it's like a guy goes fishing. He has his chair, right? He's sitting there with a fishing pole, just sitting there minding his own business. This guy not only had the chair there, he had the AK-47. And then you mentioned he had mosaics. What was the purpose of the mosaics there?
Yeah, so in essence, if you could picture, because it's a chain link fence, right, that he had been sort of, you could almost picture it in a different context, some parent showing up to watch their kid's baseball game, and they're setting up the folding chair there to watch through the chain link fence. This is a chain link fence alongside the golf course. The guy sets up the folding chair, and there's two little bags that almost look like, I don't know, maybe they've got a clip on them or something, and they're able to be clipped onto the fence, and they've got tile, mosaic, like you said, ceramic tile in there that are bulletproof. So in essence, the guy was trying to create some sort of a defensive structure in front of him, because he had to know that the second he shoots upon the former president, shots are going to come back at him. And we do know that obviously played itself out 2 months ago in Butler, Pennsylvania. So
he was setting up a little bunker system.
Pretty much, yeah.
My God.
And the guy said in that video you guys alluded to, and you played a cut from, where Newsweek caught up with this alleged would-be assassin when he was in Kyiv, talking about his participation in the war effort with Russia. He said, I was more or less turned down from actually fighting on the front lines because of my age. He's 58 years old, and because he doesn't have fighting experience. Now, I know nothing about whether or not the guy has any history hunting or shooting guns, or, that kind of stuff will continue to come out, hopefully over time, as we, have citizen journalists that look into this and so on and so forth. But the one thing we do know is that he was not at least, actively shooting at other people there in the war zone with Ukraine and Russia, but he's been in that setting. He obviously had access to some kind of a AK-47 style rifle, and was setting up what you could describe, I think fairly, as a little mini bunker there.
Incredible that would not have been spotted well in advance. I mean, this is not something where you just show up, you set up, you shoot, and you leave. He's sitting there. He has these two bags of mosaics that he's probably in the process of setting up, waiting for the arrival of the president to that green so he could putt himself off the green and move to the next hole. This is calculated. We really have to do a deep dive. I don't trust this government at all. It's like, how did he know that Trump was coming there to golf this day? We heard from Andrew Giuliani that this was not on his public schedule. How did he know that Trump would be out there golfing? How was he so relaxed that he pulls out a chair, is sitting there like he's, watching, as you pointed out, a Little League baseball game?
Yeah. Well, no, one thing I'll say is, and reading a lot about this on social media over the last few hours, Curtis, is that there are a number of people who are addressing some of the stuff you're talking about. Now, I don't mean to throw any cold water on avenue that needs to be explored here or something like that. I'm not trying to pull a Bill O'Reilly and tell you what you can and can't believe when it comes to this particular instance right now. But I will say that because Trump isn't afforded, we keep saying it, we've mentioned it a bunch of times now, he's not protected at the same level that a sitting president would be.
Say that again.
Trump is not protected at the same level that a sitting president would be.
All right, so we've had no attempted assassination attempts, thank God, against Joe Biden or Vice President Harris, and yet one attempt in which it sullied the Secret Service and FBI's reputation. You would have thought they would have said, this is never going to happen again, and they still don't have the manpower and woman power up to where it needs to be. They are begging for this man to get killed. There's no other way to describe it. How could you not have amped up to the point of protecting him like you protected him when he was the sitting president?
And what I was going to say about that was there's some, I don't know exactly the ins and outs of it, but when you're a president, they obscure your schedule a little bit better. They hold that a little more close to the vest. Yes, there's that official White House schedule, but a lot of the time it's regarding who and what you're supposed to talk about with certain people at the White House, let's say, one of the most secure locations in the world. So when you're out and about in the world and traveling to various locations, they keep some of those things a little close to the vest. Now, Andrew Giuliani, like you said, Curtis, pointed out that this golf outing was not on Trump's schedule. But I think that for someone as high profile as Trump, and when they're not doing some of those sort of like counter knowledge measures and trying to keep some of that stuff hidden, it's going to get out. So whether or not there was something more nefarious in terms of what this guy figured out, Ruth, when Trump was going to be there at the golf course, or whether he just had enough knowledge and ability to Google and find out this, that, the other thing, make an educated guess. And you also made the point, too, we really don't know how long he was there in the woods waiting for this to come around. So that all is something that hopefully will come out more in the days to come as well.
Yeah, well, I don't trust any of them. After Butler, how can you trust any of them? I mean, come on. Let's be real here, James Flippin. I've been right on this every step of the way. I said days after they iced this Thomas Matthew Crooks that you will be lucky when you finally ask where the body is not to see that they already have this guy's ashes in an urn. And everybody here laughed at me. Am I right?
Pretty much.
10 days after. 10 days after the FBI takes Thomas Matthew Crooks' body to a crematorium and its ashes in an urn. Not the family, the FBI. And this is the same group who is protecting Donald Trump. This is the same Secret Service who is protecting Donald Trump. Yeah, like I trust them. I trust them.
And Curtis, I guess we'll see. But I mean, you know, perish the thought, and God forbid. The unique thing here, then, in comparison to Thomas Michael Crooks and going back to Butler, PA, is this suspect's alive, right? This suspect is going to be interviewed.
Well, so what? Hold your horses. 1963. So was Lee Harvey Oswald alive.
Right.
Look, I don't trust them. They haven't earned our trust. Something like this is so obvious. You're going to protect dictators coming into New York City in just a week. The March of the Dictators, Despots for the annual gathering at the General Assembly. You practice weeks for this. You bring in the feds. You bring in Interpol. You bring in agencies from their countries of origin, NYPD, state police. You make sure that not a hair on their despotic heads are harmed, and they can't protect Donald Trump. And we spend billions on illegal aliens. Oh, well, we don't have enough resource. We don't have enough money. Really, James Flippin? Really? We don't have enough money or resource. Sure you don't, because you don't want to have that resource. And you don't want to spend that money.
Yeah, it's a question of prioritization. And, you know, you made in past comments on this in the last hour or so, Curtis, you mentioned the situation with RFK Jr. and his request to have Secret Service protection. It was not granted until, you know, much later in the game by the White House and all that kind of stuff. It's just very, very, very troubling to see not only this kind of thing happen, but to have a belief and at least a perception that there could be somehow, some way, some sort of political influence or bias, or are they not doing as much as they could be, whatever. And that's even not even taking it to the level of maybe something worse than that, but just saying, are they doing all that they can be? I think it's a fair question to ask.
Well, James Flippin, please go back to the deep dive. No doubt the conspiratorialists will come up with something to suggest that this was set up by Donald Trump himself, like the last one. Remember that?
Well, actually, MSNBC had a segment.
Wait. I see. I don't even have to be Nostradamus. They're already claiming that Trump set this up. Am I right or wrong?
Not exactly so much of that, but MSNBC had a segment tonight where they said, look, after Butler, Pennsylvania, Trump said we need to tone down the rhetoric, and he did that for a little bit at the RNC. But that by the time he got to the end of his speech at the RNC, it was back to the same rhetoric, and that just hasn't. We haven't risen to that standard, and it hasn't happened. He said it was going to happen, but it hasn't happened. So I guess it's on him to change the rhetoric, Curtis.
Thank you, James Flippin. Follow the conspiracies, because you know they're going to come, in which they're going to claim that Donald Trump set this one up.
Set it up.
To bring sympathy and empathy to his presidential run.
Yep. I think you're Nostradamus on this one.
Oh, I've been right every step of the way on this one, and I wish I was wrong. This is really a dark moment in the history of the United States that we cannot protect a former president, the leading candidate to become the next president, on a stupid golf course. On a stupid golf course. Can't even do security to eliminate all potential problems. A guy is sitting in a chair with an AK-47 as if he's watching a Little League game through a fence, waiting for Trump to drive by in his golf cart 100 yards away. Die! You think maybe you would have swept the entire golf course and had agents out there all hours before, all through the time that Trump is there? God, but we don't have enough resource. We don't have enough money. But, oh, God, those illegal aliens, they get everything. Billions and billions of dollars. I think it's time to open up our phone lines, in addition to waiting for Nancy, who's doing the deep dive, sitting right next to me, on more information about this guy who is in custody from Hawaii, who last we heard was recruiting mercenaries in the Ukraine for the International Legion, something we spoke a great deal about at the start of the Ukrainian war, something that Zelensky did to try to augment the lack of having trained professional fighters in his Ukrainian army. The guy's name, Ryan Wesley Ruth, and I've always said I never trust anybody with three names. I'm on a roll with this. Our number is 1-800-848-9222. That's 1-800-848-WABC.
WABC.
Get softer, smoother, and more even-toned skin after just one use with the new Gentle Exfoliating line from Cetaphil. Formulated with a unique triple acid blend that promotes surface skin cell renewal, these gentle chemical exfoliators remove dead skin cells and refine skin's texture while hydrating, resulting in softer, smoother, more even-looking skin. Shop the new Cetaphil Gentle Exfoliating line in the face and body aisles at your local Target store or online at Cetaphil.com.
Thursday Night Football is on, and it's only on Prime Video. Touchdown. This week, the new-look New England Patriots take on the reloaded New York Jets in an intense divisional matchup. What a catch. Coverage begins at 7 p.m. Eastern with TNF Tonight, presented by Verizon. Not a Prime member? Sign up for a 30-day free trial to stream the game. It's the Patriots and Jets, Thursday at 7, only on Prime Video. Restrictions apply. See Amazon.com/Amazon Prime for details.
Another assassination attempt on former President Donald Trump.
The status on President Trump.
Now the latest from 77 WABC. Here's Curtis Sliwa.
Earlier today, attempted assassination of Donald Trump occurred at his golf course, Trump International Golf Course, West Palm Beach, not far from where he resides in Mar-a-Lago. The gunman has been taken into custody. Let's make sure nothing happens to him like happened to Lee Harvey Oswald. Authorities, please. Ryan Wesley Ruth from Hawaii, last known to be recruiting for the International Legion of Mercenaries who are fighting in the Ukraine for Zelensky against Russia. Nancy is side by side with me. She's done the deep dive. What else have we learned from his social networking before everyone in Silicon Valley felt, oh my God, we can't let the people know about this guy because they can't handle the truth. So they've scrubbed all of his social networking and media. What were you able to ascertain and look at before they took it down, Nancy?
Okay, so again, he had an active Facebook site, which was taken down today, and then an hour or two after that, the Twitter site that he had was taken down. It makes mostly references in the recent year or two to the support of the Ukraine, and these efforts to not only indicate his desire to fight, although allegedly he can't fight, but is really actively recruiting people. So he has different things saying, this should be, again, in these really weird moral terms that he talks in. You could tell, whatever's with his mentality, he views things, he uses a lot of this terminology like evil, good, bad, right, wrong. So that's, clearly indicative of someone who has some, very passionate beliefs about something. And on his Facebook, he starts talking about that the Ukraine had basically gone along with one of his plans where they were even utilizing soldiers from Afghan to fight in the Ukraine. So it's he was a multinational recruiter for the Ukraine war, which is really, I think, probably the most telling thing about him. For some reason, he was very actively trying to do that. Now, he also had a website called Fight for Ukraine, where it has basically the same sort of information, different ways to get in touch with him, explain to everyone that it's a little bit of a moral imperative to be fighting on the side of Ukraine, and then showing that, with this military recruitment, if you joined, you can get $1,200 a month, no skill set necessary, no resume necessary. You just have to be able to afford to get yourself to Krakow. And then once you get there, it sounds very, interesting in a way. You don't have to have military experience, but you must sell yourself that you're capable. I'm not really sure how firm of a contract this thing sounds like, but so those are his online sites. Now, there's also a story that has surfaced about him that initially came out in 2002, that an armed man, this is him, was arrested after barricading himself in a business during a 3-hour standoff. So when he was 36, and this is back when he was in North Carolina, apparently he worked in some sort of construction thing. He was arrested without incident. He was pulled over by the cops around 10 p.m. during a traffic stop, but he put his hand on a firearm and drove to United Roofing, where he remained barricaded inside. He wound up being charged with carrying a concealed weapon and possession of a weapon of mass destruction, referring to a fully automatic machine gun that he had. And then he was charged with resisting arrest, delaying, obstructing law enforcement, driving without a license revoked. So now this is back in 2002. I don't know if there's no follow-up with this one, but clearly it shows that he was relatively unhinged even back then. So that part, like I said, the rest of his social media, the only thing that's up at this point that I can still see is LinkedIn. I'm not sure why they would, find it so necessary to delete his social media. I'm not sure how it offends their platform when it didn't offend it a couple hours ago, but I guess, they want to just do their own research without other people figuring out what's going on. It said that he lives in Hawaii. Again, that's what his LinkedIn says as well. He lives in Hawaii, and he makes himself sound like he's this humanitarian, like Mother Teresa or something, just trying to help all the little people across the globe. But it really sounds like he's kind of a warmonger in many ways.
Please keep diving. We need to try to find out more about this guy as Silicon Valley once again decides, people can't handle this information. We'll tell you on a need to know. It's almost reminds me, this image of Tom Cruise questioning at that time in An Officer and a Gentleman.
No, you're wrong with the name. Officer and Gentleman, I think, is with Richard Gere. Officer and Gentleman.
Oh, you have
I know what you're talking about. You're talking about Jack Nicholson.
That's right. Where Jack Nicholson says to Tom Cruise after being berated, A Few Good Men.
Yeah, there you go.
After being berated, you can't handle the truth.
Yeah.
So all of his social networking, which would have been up there, we could have come to our own conclusions. Scrubbed.
Yeah, I mean, I was able to see the Twitter a couple hours ago before it was taken down, and I didn't, I should have thought to start screenshotting it, but I didn't see anything offensive about it. The Facebook had already been taken down, but again, that's what, a lot of people did. They were screenshotting it and streaming it before it got taken down. So there's a lot of, screenshots which do show that he was clearly very active politically, like in terms of, trying to push his belief of who you should vote for on everyone else. And again, just in these moral imperative terms, right, wrong, evil, good, bad, the way to the world. I mean, just real extremism.
But also, look at this. There is linkage here. Thankfully, he was not successful in his assassination attempt, but he was coming from Hawaii, which is considered a paradise, although it's hit hard times. A lot of emotionally disturbed people, a lot of homeless, a lot of crime. It does not have that feel any longer that at one point it was known for, whether it's Oahu, Maui, Kauai, those islands. Just as Mark David Chapman came from Hawaii to somehow make a statement as an adherent of the figure and the catcher in the rye that he loved. He wanted to emulate Holden Caulfield. So he decided to shoot John Lennon in the back. He hit him 4 times with a .38 special, fired 5 shots, and then just sat there and awaited the authorities to come arrest him. He is still incarcerated upstate in Greenhaven Prison. 2 guys from Hawaii. I would say there's a connection here to Hawaii. I know a lot of you are saying, what the hell are you talking about? Spare me. I've been right every step of the way so far. Spare me, you doubting Thomases out there. Every step of the way on Butler County. That assassination attempt, by the way, that has almost fallen to the wayside 63 days later.
Well, and actually just one sort of interesting connection too, right? So the AK-47 is, I think, the weapon of choice they're saying here. Now, that was also what was used at Butler. Now, when Andrew was on before, he was saying that at the 5th hole, you could theoretically be as close as 50 yards from that sort of street area. Now, the stories that have come out so far are saying that Trump was about 300 to 500 yards away, right? But that's a big difference. And then the AK-47, right? So now where the other person was in Butler was 147 yards away, right? So that's
that was an AR-15.
AR. Well, I mean, they're very similar, though. They're very similar.
Well, you would know. You're Annie Oakley.
Very similar. But yeah, that's interesting because again, these guns, they have a 400-yard capacity. So according to what the reports are, it would have been a tough, hit. But if what Andrew is saying is correct, where you're as close as 50 yards, that's a much easier hit.
So, ladies and gentlemen, I want you to realize this guy was sitting on the perimeter of the Trump golf course, Trump International, West Palm Beach, in a freaking lawn chair with a AK-47, probably a 6-pack of beer, just waiting for the president to pass by on his golf cart, waiting right by the green area. As Andrew described, it's where you putt out and then go to the next hole. And then begin, you take your driving, your Big Bertha out, and you hit your first shot towards the next green. So as Andrew described it, he said it's really only 50 to 100 yards.
And it's crazy when you think about the level of security that's required to get into that sort of facility. I mean, I'm a little floored that with those, sort of small segments of the perimeter that are that close that it has that level of access. I'm just more surprised that it's not solid walls. It's not much higher in those few points.
I want to know if the Secret Service was using drones, because they didn't use drones in Butler. They didn't bring their own. the Butler County Sheriff's Department said, well, we've got some drones we can lend you. Nope, we're not going to use drones. But Sniper Boy certainly had a drone 2 hours before Thomas Matthew Crooks. He didn't have any problem flying that drone all over the place. Nobody ever went up to him and talked to him. Nobody ever questioned him and said, excuse me, young man, why are you flying a drone? Trump is expected to walk out on that stage in 2 hours. Not once. You would think this time they would have drones everywhere flying, wherever the president went. Even if he had to take a rest stop on I-95 and they had to clear out the rest stop area, the public area, so he could go in and use the urinal, you'd think they'd have a freaking drone flying over him. I don't trust any of them. And every day they give me more reason. And you know what we're going to hear? Incompetence, malfeasance. We didn't have enough agents, right? We didn't give enough agents the way we would for a sitting president. Why? Why? When we come back, I'm going to tell you of a guy, when he was president, had 2 assassination attempts against him in 17 days. And that's because nobody ever took this guy seriously, because all they did was make fun of this guy when he was president. And he sort of deserved it a bit. He was a bit of a caricature, so to speak. Let me see if I can resuscitate everybody's memories and bring them back into the time machine, because they promised even then this will never happen again. 1975. It'll never, ever, ever. We promise, we swear, cross our hearts, and hope to die. Secret Service, FBI. It'll never, ever happen again. Never mind 1963. 1975 will never, ever, 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 ever happen again. Well, it just did.
WABC. Since 1979, TireRack.com has been helping people find the right tires for how, what, and where they drive. They sell only the best, like the full line of Michelin tires. Test results, ratings, and reviews are there to assist. Or try the Tire Decision Guide to get a personalized tire recommendation. Tires ship fast and free to you or one of over 10,000 recommended installers. In many areas, they offer mobile tire installation. Shop Michelin tires at TireRack.com.
Another assassination attempt on former President Donald Trump.
The status on President Trump.
Now the latest from 77 WABC. Here's Curtis Sliwa.
So get ready in the next hour. We're going to do a little history. The last president who had 2 attempted assassination attempts on him within 17 days. And the Secret Service and FBI said, I swear it'll never happen again. I know we swore in 1963 that it would never happen again, but, trust us, it'll never happen again. Well, it has. And to give us updates on that, our own James Flippin, thanks for having joined us all evening long with these updates. James, have we learned anything more about this gunman or what led up to his attempt to kill Donald Trump on the golf course?
Well, Curtis, Nancy, you guys have been on it all night. This guy that's been identified as the would-be assassin, police say 58-year-old Ryan Wesley Ralph, a resident of Hawaii who was actually, I guess, originally from North Carolina, also spent some time in Ukraine. And aspects of the guy's social media have been scrubbed at this point. I think it was around 7 o'clock when his Facebook page had been taken down. But, Nancy's all over it because the guy's LinkedIn profile is still out there. There's an X profile that's out there that I guess wasn't quite as active, but does have some messages from the guy. And this is a guy who I guess made his way to Florida. It was around 1:30 this afternoon when, per a 911 call, shots were fired at Trump International Golf Course in West Palm Beach, Florida, which is really just about a 10-minute drive from that Mar-a-Lago club where Trump lives, his primary residence. So Trump, I guess, was getting ready to putt at the 5th hole on this golf course, and probably at maybe the 6th or 7th hole, because that's where the agents had got out ahead to scout the location and try to build out a security perimeter. A gun muzzle was spotted coming through the fence line. So in theory, that could have been when this would-be assassin was lining up a shot. 4 shots were fired at the would-be assassin, described as pops that rang out across the golf course. Agents tackled Trump to the ground. Again, this is 2 months after he was tackled at the stage in Butler, Pennsylvania. The would-be assassin fled at that point, took to his Nissan SUV. A witness that happened to be nearby took a picture of the guy's license plate. License plate reader technology was used, and they tracked the suspect to a nearby county on Interstate 95. That's where sheriff's deputies pulled him over. The suspect was arrested. I guess apparently had a calm demeanor, didn't ask why he was being pulled over. And then back at that would-be assassin's nest in the wooded area ringing the golf course, they found an AK-47 style rifle, a bag with a GoPro camera. Ceramic tiles have been put into bags that were set up almost like body armor around this guy's folding chair. And that's at this point what we know about the suspect in terms of he's an outspoken Ukraine activist, an outspoken Taiwan activist, a guy who talked about that Russia-Ukraine war was kind of a war between good and evil and people who were generous and people who wanted to take. And he really had it all boiled down to very basic terms. And it'll be interesting to see what the investigation uncovers in terms of that potentially being connected to his motivation here in this alleged incident. So at this point, Trump has said, look, I'm fine. There was a tweet sent out by Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina who said that he spoke to Trump, that Trump's as resolute as ever. We know that he kind of had that same response after the Butler, PA assassination attempt. So Trump is okay, no worse for wear, at least physically, after this second assassination attempt. And there is, in fact, a suspect in custody down there in South Florida.
So this guy who tried to whack Trump, Brian Wesley Ruth, never trusts anybody with 3 names. Why is it they always seem to have 3 names, James Flippin? I mean, just look at the 3 we've talked about tonight. Ryan Wesley Ruth, that's number 1. Thomas Matthew Crooks, whose ashes are in an urn now near Butler, Pennsylvania. And Mark David Chapman, who came on a mission to execute John Lennon, which he did outside of the Dakota building at 72nd in Central Park West. Why do they always have 3 names?
Yeah, I don't know. There's also, of course, James Earl Ray. We've talked about Lee Harvey Oswald earlier, John Wilkes Booth. It does seem like for some reason there's always 3 names. I'll say this much, at least in the news business, the middle name sometimes gets out there just because the person's profile is being circulated or it's like officially based off DMV records. And for all we know, this guy doesn't really actually use his middle name, but it kind of fits with the profile, I guess, in that respect. So, yeah, Ryan Wesley Ralph or Ruth.
All right. Remember, please, between you and our news director, Noam Laden, we need an answer. Did the Secret Service have drones over the golf course while President Donald Trump was in the clubhouse preparing to come out, shoot 18 holes of golf, and then obviously when he was on the course itself? If they say no, or if it turns out it's no, then we know what this is about, James Flippin. We know what this is about.
Yeah, scary implications there.
Well, I mean, think about it. What rationale, after not having drones at Butler, would you have for not having drones over a golf course, which is very large, a huge amount of area you got to cover? You know, you got trees, you got brush, you got areas that are out of sight, out of mind that a drone could zone in on. What would be their excuse for not having drones in this situation?
All I could assume is that, you know, they'll say there was some aspect of a minimal resources thing because this was not something where Trump has the full level of protection that a sitting president would have. We've heard that said many times, both during the Butler PA, since then, that there was going to be a stepped up level of response since Butler, Pennsylvania on July 13th. Whether or not this is just another instance of things falling through the cracks or if they did not, in fact, step things up to the extent that they said they were going to, I don't know. I'd like to say that there'll be answers that come out in the days that follow, but There's still so much that we don't know about. I mean, leave aside the JFK stuff we've been alluding to all night.
You know,
we still don't know about July 13th.
You don't have to have Secret Service protection or FBI protection. You could reject it and hire your own security, former FBI or Secret Service guys and gals that you trust, that you have a mutual working relationship with. I think the Trump organization should think about that now because, I mean, how many more times, James? You're dependent on the government. The government is saying we didn't provide the level of security that a sitting president gets, and yet this sitting president has had 0 attempts on his life, and we know he's pretty stationary and probably will be for the rest of the term that he's in office. So they won't ramp it up now. Now, imagine if they don't ramp it up now. Then I think it gives every reason in the world for Trump supporters, the RNC, if necessary, to raise money, to hire the best possible private security in the world to guarantee that nothing is going to happen to Donald Trump, his family, his supporters, and all the MAGA people who come to these unbelievable rallies. I mean, he's going back to outdoor rallies in which there'll probably be leading up to November 5th, upwards of 100,000 at some of these rallies.
Yeah, I don't know what to say about the private security idea because it's certainly something that's entered my mind a few times and definitely did even just after what happened in Butler. I immediately was thinking, look, if there's this much question about what really happened, could there have been people who willfully looked the other way or allowed things to happen? You know, still so much that we don't know. And you say to yourself, maybe you need to get something different here to actually keep Trump safe. Certainly something that I thought about. The only thing I would think is that maybe there's almost a unwillingness by Trump to do that because of the message it would send, right? Like if you say, okay, I have to hire my own security there, then you're basically saying that you really, it's saying the quiet part out loud to an extent. And I'm not saying that that shouldn't be done right now, but I do think that it's almost like maybe almost anarchist in a way to say, I need my own Secret Service right now. You know what I'm saying? Does that make sense at all?
I understand,
really?
But after we heard the plea from his wife, Melania, which I played over the weekend, she doesn't believe that the answers came forward to justify the Secret Service and FBI's role at Butler. Everyone is questioning them. And you would think as an agency, you'd want to be airtight. It doesn't, drones, cameras everywhere he goes, especially if we know he's going there in advance. We can get cameras out there. We can have every square inch of this area secured and under surveillance at all times so that we don't have another embarrassing moment. Stain the organization. They don't seem to care.
Another thing I'll note here, Curtis, that still we're trying to figure out exactly what the truth is that there's been somewhat conflicting reports in terms of how close this would-be sniper's nest was to where Trump actually was. Originally, the reporting was 500 to 700 yards, which gun experts will tell you is really nothing to be feeling safe about in terms of a long gun with a scope mounted on it. But there's also been some reporting that maybe Trump was as close as 100 yards within wherever this guy was. So,
nobody knows that course better than Andrew Giuliani, who joined us in the 8 o'clock hour. He said 50 to 100 yards from that point of the fence to where Trump would have been putting out to finish that hole and then get back in the golf cart to go to the next hole to line up his tee shot. I trust Andrew Giuliani on that. I don't trust these others. But on that note, Flippin', we'll get back to you in the 11 o'clock hour for an update. Keep digging. When we come back, it'll be Nancy trying to unearth the social networking of the guy who is in custody now. We've been told he's alive. But then again, 1963, so we told that about Lee Harvey Oswald. And then we saw a guy emerge from the crowd in the basement of the Dallas Police Department's main facility. who came out and shot him multiple times in the stomach, and soon he was dead. And I remember watching that as a kid on TV and saying to the adults who were there, I think my aunts and uncles and my mom, my dad was out at sea, how the hell did that guy shoot Lee Harvey Oswald? And everyone looked at one another and said, how the hell was that guy even in the basement of the Dallas Police Department as they were transporting the assassin of JFK, Lee Harvey Oswald? Nancy, have you had any ability at unearthing any other social networking details of the guy who tried to kill Donald Trump earlier in the day, Ryan Wesley Routh?
Well, I don't see any more personal social media details, but one of the media outlets was able to get in touch with his son, Orrin Routh. And then it was like that was the first that he had heard about what had happened. He said his father hates Trump as, quote, every reasonable person does. I don't like Trump either, but he said his dad's not a violent person and he couldn't believe his father would target the president. He said, he said, my dad's had a couple of traffic tickets as far as I know. That's it. I love my dad. Nothing like him. And then he sort of rushed off the call a little bit because I guess he was taken off guard. And then he sent a series of texts to this, it's like a Daily Mail reporter. So, I mean, it seems like his son and him have had a strained relationship. So he wasn't even aware that he was in Florida. He thought he was still in Hawaii. And he mentioned the same thing that I had brought up before, which was the information that's on his LinkedIn site, that he works as a general contractor. He builds small homes in Hawaii, and he previously owned a roofing company. That's the one where he was working as a general contractor in North Carolina. And yeah, that's kind of it. And then they had one neighbor, who has just been interviewed. This is someone who is in North Carolina as well, who had said lived next to him, had known him for like nearly 2 decades, described him as unusual. Well, that's a good word. But said she could have never expected him to be involved in something like this. Quote, him, I mean, trying to shoot Trump, that's a lot. I would never have guessed, and I would have swore up and down that's not him. I can't believe it. Okay, she said she wasn't surprised to hear about guns being involved. She claims to have seen guns in Routh's house for over the years. Huh. Okay, so some information we have.
Back to what his estranged son said. Can you just tell us the first few lines? Because I think it's an indication of how some Americans almost like flip this off. It's sort of like, gee, I'm really sorry that he wasn't successful in his mission.
It's interesting. So apparently he wasn't even aware that his dad wasn't in Hawaii, like where he normally lives. He had no idea that he was in Florida. So he gets the call, from the media, and they say, oh, well, this is the first time hearing about it. And he's asking, was my father shot or injured? Then he said his father hates Trump as every reasonable person does.
All right, so he already has a strong point of view. His father has been arrested. He's going to be charged with the attempted assassination of President Donald Trump. And could you just read that line again?
Yeah, he said his father hates Trump as every reasonable person does. I don't like Trump either, he added. But then he said that his father's not a violent person, and he couldn't believe he'd target the president. Again, I'm not really sure this lack of a violent, like saying he disassociating him from violence. I mean, he clearly was making a point of trying to recruit people for a war. I mean, again, I don't know how you could define being more of a violent person than that.
And again, what he was doing over in Kyiv in Ukraine was trying to find foreigners who would come join their version of the French Foreign Legion.
Yeah, exactly. So different volunteers. And what he was posting about on the different social media sites was that the Ukraine has apparently, in his opinion, it was a difficult bar for, recruiting these foreign soldiers, that they were putting up hurdles to people that he had solicited who were willing to fight in the war because lack of military experience, other credentials that probably would be, required for this. So he was, and part of it was including like Afghan former soldiers, and Ukraine right away was saying, no, we don't want to have those soldiers, and they were worried about maybe like internal sort of dissidents or something. But, so again, he was trying to go all throughout the world to recruit people to fight in the war. I mean, I'm guessing, like, again, he must be a headhunter. He makes money off of people being recruited into the war effort.
Well, maybe he wanted to keep it real and be a mercenary himself, but for who? For who?
Yeah, exactly.
So now, my concern here, and I know a lot of folks out there immediately like, Curtis. Well, I've been right every step of the way, so don't give me that Curtis stuff. Is to make sure this guy doesn't have a Jeffrey Epstein moment. Because they'll tell us, oh, he was in a cell, we had him under surveillance, suicide watch, and he was able to get hold of a sheet and hang himself from the light stanchion. Yeah, right. Sure. Do we trust this government? Absolutely not. In any way, shape, or form. Too many of these things have occurred in the past. In the next hour, we're not going to be doing animal welfare. We're actually going to be doing your calls. This is far too important. I must tell you, earlier in the day when we arrived, we had been at the San Gennaro Festival. Both I and Nancy are heavily involved in the attempt to save the Elizabeth Street Greens Park. And we've joined like Robert De Niro and Scorsese and Patti Smith and others in order to stand up to City Hall, which wants to send bulldozers in this week. But this is not the appropriate time to be talking about that. But I got to tell you, in the aftermath of the demise of 880 AM WCBS, only 2 all-news stations in New York City, owned by the same company, recently purchased by George Soros in his attempt to control all media all the time. So from 2 outlets of all news all the time, they went down to 1. 1010 WINS. So it was in the 7 o'clock hour. Joe Piscopo was still on. It's a nationally syndicated show, so we chose not to knock Joe off and go into live reporting as we did in Butler when Cousin Brucey was kind enough to step aside and let me take the microphone over, and we went to work with Noam Laden, our news director, you, Nancy, you were doing the deep dive, and Noam's son, who did an amazing job, and we went like the next 10 straight hours. So I tuned to 1010 WINS, figuring they'll give me the latest updates, right? You know, they weren't even talking about the attempted assassination of Donald Trump. It was their second story. I said, my God, the George Soros influence already. And now determining what is important and what is not important. Look, you are investing billions of dollars into this form of media that you've never been involved with before. You better believe you got your finger on the scale. Now, are we going to blame that on incompetence, ineptness, malfeasance, 1010 WINS? No, very professional news crew over there. But on a day when the President of the United States, Donald Trump, former president, has a second assassination attempt 63 days after Butler, and that's not your primary story? Well, that's why all of you who listen to WCBS AM 880 for all those years, and then no longer, they've gone dark. It's now ESPN Sports, or you listen to 1010 WINS. You have a much better alternative. It's called WABC because we are the number 1 station in the nation by day and the number 1 news talk station in the world at night.
The following is a paid political announcement.
This November, down-ballot victories are more important than in any past election. Presenting the Get Out and Vote Republican campaign. The purpose is to reach local conservative and Republican voters, to drive them to vote and to vote down ballot on party lines. Get out and vote in this crucial election year. Vote down ballot on party lines. Get out and vote Republican.
I am Paul King, candidate for Congress in New York 5. I approve this message.
Paid for by Paul King for Congress.